My landlord illegally entered my apartment and stole my grandmother's jewelry, then denied everything. When I set up hidden cameras, what I caught him doing shocked the police. The first thing I noticed when I walked into my apartment that Tuesday evening wasn't the smell of vanilla candles I'd left burning, or the pile of law school textbooks scattered across my coffee table. It was the silence where there should have been the soft ticking of my grandmother's antique Cartier watch. The watch that had been sitting on my nightstand every morning for the past 8 months, right next to the jewelry box containing her pearl necklace and diamond earrings. My heart started racing as I rushed to my bedroom. The nightstand was exactly as I'd left it. Laptop charging cable coiled neatly, half-empty water bottle, my copy of constitutional law still bookmarked at page 247. But the small velvet jewelry box was gone. Not misplaced, not fallen behind. The nightstand. Gone. I tore through my apartment like a madwoman. Under the bed, behind the dresser, inside every drawer and cabinet. Maybe I'd moved it while cleaning. Maybe I'd put it somewhere safe and forgotten. But deep down, I knew. Someone had been in my apartment, and they'd taken the only things I had left of Grandma Rose. My landlord, Marcus Webb, answered his phone on the third ring. His voice carried that practiced tone of concerned property management mixed with barely concealed annoyance. When I explained about the missing jewelry, he immediately launched into a speech about how he never enters tenant apartments without 24-hour written notice, how he takes security very seriously, and how I should probably check with my boyfriend or roommate about borrowing the jewelry. The problem was I didn't have a boyfriend or roommate, and Marcus knew that. He'd been my landlord for 8 months, collected rent from me personally every month, knew I lived alone, and kept regular hours between law school and my part-time job at the Starbucks on Mass Ave. What made this even more suspicious was the pattern I'd started noticing over the past few months. Small items had been disappearing from my apartment with increasing frequency. My Bose wireless headphones vanished from my desk where I always left them plugged in. A bottle of expensive Chanel No. 5 perfume disappeared from my bathroom counter. A graduation gift from college that I'd been saving for special occasions. Each time, I'd convinced myself I was just scattered from law school stress, maybe misplacing things during late-night study sessions. But jewelry boxes don't relocate themselves, and Marcus's immediate defensiveness felt wrong. Most landlords would express concern, maybe offer to check with other tenants or review building security. Instead, he'd gone straight into cover-your-ass mode, denying everything before I'd even suggested he might be involved. Update. Thanks for everyone reaching out. A lot of you are asking why I didn't call police immediately. Honestly, I was scared and wanted to be absolutely sure before making accusations against someone who controlled my housing. My property law professor always said, document everything. Turns out that advice saved my entire case. Has anyone else dealt with sketchy landlords who made you second-guess yourself? I'd moved into the one-bedroom apartment in Porter Square 8 months earlier, right after starting my final year at Suffolk Law. The rent was $2,400 a month, steep for a law student living on loans and earning $12 an hour slinging lattes, but it was walking distance to the Red Line and had reliable Wi-Fi for remote. Classes during COVID, Marcus had seemed professional during the apartment showing. Mid-40s, always wearing a Red Sox cap, driving a newer Honda Pilot with multiple keychains hanging from the ignition. He owned 4 buildings in the Porter Square area and mentioned he'd been in property management for over a decade. The lease was standard Massachusetts boilerplate, but I'd noticed he'd insisted on keeping master keys to all units for emergency maintenance purposes only. The jewelry had belonged to my grandmother, Rose Moretti, who'd passed away 2 years earlier. She'd been a seamstress in Boston's North End for 40 years, working in a tiny shop near Hanover Street and saving every penny to buy herself beautiful things. The Cartier watch had her initials engraved on the back, RM 1974, along with a distinctive scratch on the crystal from when she'd dropped it rushing to catch the tea one morning. The Mikimoto pearl necklace came with authentication papers I'd kept in my filing cabinet, and the diamond earrings were vintage Tiffany pieces she'd bought herself for her 50th birthday. These weren't just valuable items, they were irreplaceable, family heirlooms with clear provenance and sentimental value that couldn't be measured in dollars. My mother had given them to me when I moved out for law school, saying Grandma Rose would have wanted me to have something beautiful to remind me that hard work and determination pay off. What I didn't know then was that other tenants had been experiencing similar problems, but Marcus had been skillfully keeping us isolated from each other. My neighbor Sarah from 2B had mentioned losing a Marc Jacobs handbag she was certain she'd left on her kitchen counter. Miguel from the first floor complained about his iPad Pro disappearing from his coffee table, but Marcus had a different explanation. For each incident, Sarah probably left her purse at work. Miguel must have taken his iPad somewhere and forgotten. The pattern was always the same. Marcus would express appropriate concern, offer to keep an eye out for the missing items, then subtly suggest the tenant was probably mistaken or careless. He'd follow up with gentle reminders about lease terms, building security policies, or upcoming rent increases. Just enough pressure to make you feel like pushing the issue might jeopardize your housing situation. After losing my grandmother's jewelry, I felt completely violated but also helpless. I was a broke law student, not a detective, and I had zero proof Marcus was involved beyond my gut instinct, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong with the whole situation. That's when I decided to consult my evidence professor, Dr. Martinez, during her office hours. I framed it hypothetically, asking about a friend situation involving potential landlord misconduct, but she immediately understood what I was really asking. Her advice was crystal clear. If I suspected illegal entry, I needed to document everything meticulously and gather concrete evidence before making any accusations that could backfire. Dr. Martinez also warned me about the legal complexities of recording devices in rental properties. Cameras in private spaces like bedrooms could create serious legal issues later, even in my own apartment. But common areas like living rooms and kitchens were generally permissible as long as I wasn't recording others without their knowledge or consent. She recommended I start with basic documentation, photographing my apartment's condition before leaving, keeping detailed logs of my schedule, and maintaining receipts for all valuable items. If someone was tracking my routine to time their entries, I needed to establish my own paper trail. I ordered a set of mini wireless cameras from Amazon, 2 disguised as phone chargers, and 1 that looked like a regular smoke detector. Total cost, $180 that I charged to my credit card, meant for bar exam preparation fees. Following Dr. Martinez's advice, I positioned them strategically in my living room and kitchen, carefully avoiding any spaces that could create privacy concerns later. The lease explicitly prohibited changing locks without landlord approval, and Marcus had made it clear during move-in that any unauthorized modifications would result in immediate eviction. As a law student already drowning in debt, I couldn't risk losing my housing. Instead, I decided to focus on gathering evidence of his illegal activities first. I also started documenting everything obsessively, photographing the exact placement of items before leaving, noting the times I left and returned, keeping a detailed inventory of valuables with serial numbers and photos. If Marcus was studying my patterns, I was going to study his right back. The setup felt like something out of a legal thriller, but I reminded myself this was real life, and I needed to be smart about it. I programmed the cameras to send motion, alerts to my phone, and cloud store all footage automatically. Whatever happened next, I'd have a permanent record. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after installing the cameras, I was sitting in constitutional law class when my phone started buzzing with motion alerts. My stomach dropped as I opened the app under my desk and watched live footage of Marcus letting himself into my apartment using his master key. The video quality was incredible. Marcus moved through my space with the confidence of someone who'd done this countless times before. He went straight to my bedroom and began systematically searching through my dresser drawers, opening every jewelry box and checking inside books and containers. He spent nearly 20 minutes methodically photographing the contents of my desk, including personal letters, bank statements, and credit card bills, before pocketing $120 cash I'd left in an envelope for my portion of utilities. I sat in class watching this violation happen in real time, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. My professor was literally discussing Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search and seizure, while I watched my landlord conduct the most unreasonable search imaginable in my own home. When I got home that evening, the cash was gone, along with a silver bracelet that had belonged to my great-aunt. But now I had high-definition video proof of Marcus's illegal entry, theft, and potential identity theft through photographing my personal financial documents. Dr. Martinez's next piece of advice proved crucial. Don't confront Marcus immediately. One incident could be explained away or dismissed, but multiple documented violations would establish an undeniable pattern of criminal behavior. I needed to let him dig his own grave deeper. Over the next 10 days, my cameras captured Marcus, entering my apartment 3 more times. Each visit followed an identical pattern. He'd photograph personal documents, steal small amounts of cash or jewelry, and conduct systematic searches of my belongings like he was creating inventory lists for future thefts. His timing was sickeningly precise. He only entered when he knew I'd be in class or at work, never staying longer than 25 minutes, always leaving everything seemingly undisturbed except for the missing items. The man had clearly perfected his system through extensive practice. The breakthrough came when I decided to search online for my stolen jewelry. Using the serial numbers from my grandmother's authentication papers, I found a listing on eBay for vintage Cartier ladies' watch, excellent condition with original documentation. The photographs clearly showed my grandmother's watch, complete, with her engraved initials RM 1974 and the distinctive scratch on the crystal. The seller's profile was obviously fake, created just weeks earlier with zero feedback history and no other listings. But the contact phone number led me directly to a Facebook account belonging to Marcus Webb. He hadn't even bothered creating a separate identity for his criminal enterprise. I immediately contacted Dr. Martinez and showed her everything I'd gathered. She was genuinely impressed by the thoroughness of my documentation and confirmed that I had more than enough evidence to involve law enforcement. She also connected me with a local attorney who specialized in tenant rights violations, who agreed to review my case pro bono after hearing the details. Update: the evidence was absolutely overwhelming, but I knew timing was crucial. A lot of people are asking why I waited to call police instead of confronting Marcus directly. My professor's advice to build an airtight case first completely validated itself. What the police discovered next proved this was way bigger than just my apartment. Have you ever had to gather evidence against someone who had power over your housing situation? Walking into the Cambridge Police Department with my attorney and a thick folder of evidence felt surreal. Detective Angela Rodriguez had been investigating a pattern of similar complaints about landlord theft in the greater Boston area, and my case provided exactly the concrete proof she'd been waiting for to move forward. The video evidence changed everything immediately. Detective Rodriguez explained that landlord-tenant disputes usually came down to he-said-she-said situations that were difficult to prosecute, but clear video documentation of systematic illegal entry and theft would make this case straightforward. She was particularly interested in Marcus's photographing of my personal financial documents, which elevated the charges to include identity theft and violation of privacy rights under Massachusetts law. What I learned next completely shocked me. Marcus had been on law enforcement radar for over 6 months. Multiple tenants across his 4 buildings had filed complaints about missing items, but without concrete evidence, investigators couldn't obtain search warrants or move forward with charges. My meticulous documentation provided the missing link that connected dozens of separate incidents into one massive criminal enterprise. The investigation moved quickly once police had probable cause. Within 5 days, they'd obtained comprehensive search warrants for Marcus's home, his storage units, and his vehicle. Detective Rodriguez assembled a team that included specialists in organized theft and financial crimes, suggesting this case was much larger than anyone had initially suspected. The search results were staggering. Marcus had been operating like a professional burglar, maintaining detailed digital files on each tenant, including work schedules, daily routines, and photographic inventories of valuable possessions he'd cataloged during maintenance visits. His home office contained printed schedules for over 30 tenants across multiple properties, with notes about their most valuable items and optimal times for entry. Most shocking was his basement storage area, over $50,000 worth of stolen property, organized by building and apartment number like a criminal warehouse. My grandmother's jewelry was there, along with electronics, designer clothing, artwork, and personal items dating back over 3 years. Marcus had essentially been running a systematic burglary operation under the legitimate cover of property management. The investigation expanded when police discovered evidence linking Marcus to similar operations in Worcester and Springfield. Federal charges were added when they found he'd been selling stolen goods across state lines through online marketplaces and using tenant personal information for credit card fraud and identity theft. Marcus was arrested at his home on a Thursday morning while I was taking my evidence final exam. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was demonstrating my knowledge of criminal procedure and constitutional law while my case was playing out in real life just miles away. Marcus ultimately accepted a plea deal to avoid federal charges and a lengthy trial that would have exposed the full scope of his criminal network. He pled guilty to multiple felony counts, including breaking and entering, larceny over $250, identity theft, and violation of tenant privacy rights. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in state prison plus 5 years probation and ordered full restitution to all victims. His property management licenses were permanently revoked across Massachusetts, and he was forced to sell all his buildings to cover legal fees and victim compensation. The investigation revealed he'd stolen from over 40 tenants across a 3-year period, making this one of the largest landlord fraud cases in state history. Most importantly, this case led to significant changes in Massachusetts tenant protection laws. The Tenant Privacy Protection Act now requires landlords to provide detailed written justification for any emergency entry and mandates that all non-emergency maintenance be scheduled with explicit tenant consent and supervision. I recovered my grandmother's jewelry along with everything else Marcus had stolen from my apartment. But beyond the material recovery, this experience fundamentally shaped my understanding of how the law works in practice versus theory. Sometimes the most valuable legal education happens outside the classroom, in real situations where your rights are actually being violated. The case also influenced my career direction. I'm now focusing on tenant rights and housing law as a newly licensed attorney, working with a firm that provides legal aid to renters facing similar situations. Every day, I use the lessons I learned from this experience to help other people who feel powerless against landlords and property managers who abuse their authority. My new apartment has state-of-the-art security, a landlord who respects boundaries and follows proper procedures, and a bank safety deposit box for my grandmother's jewelry. But I still wear her watch every day. Now, as a reminder that sometimes the best way to honor someone's memory is to fight for justice when others try to take what isn't rightfully theirs. Update. The case officially closed last month, and I passed the bar exam with flying colors. Several law schools now use my documentation and case strategy as a teaching example in their property law and evidence courses. This experience definitely influenced my decision to specialize in tenant advocacy as a new attorney. Sometimes standing up for yourself creates positive changes that help protect others too. Would you have trusted your instincts to gather evidence, or would you have confronted the situation directly?